Hi, everybody, and welcome to our session here at the Peralta Online Equity Conference. The session is called Digital Ethics and ePortfolios Online, brought to you by Sarah Zurhellen, Megan Haskins, Theresa Conefrey, Megan Mize in Spirit, and Kristina Hoeppner. And before we get started, I'm just going to go through a few details. One, this session is being recorded for our colleagues who couldn't join us, either because work got in the way, life got in the way, or the time zones just don't match well. We're also using captions. So the automated Zoom captions, you can turn them on easily by going to the bottom of your Zoom window, clicking the close caption button, and then choosing show subtitle. Then you can toggle them on and off as you wish. Last but not least, we encourage comments and questions in the chat. So please pose your questions using that chat box, and we will moderate with this many panelists. I don't think many will get by their eagle eyes. And then last but not least, I'd like to hand over the baton, the talking stick, to Sarah Zurhellen to get us kicked off here.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here in whatever time zone you're currently housed in. We're really excited to talk to you today. All of us are members of AAEEBL's task force on digital ethics and ePortfolios, and we're going to talk to you about some of that work that we've done and then discuss some of it with you in breakout rooms. So a quick session overview. We're going to share the principles about digital ethics and ePortfolio work that our task force has drafted and revised over the past few years. We're going to then poll everyone, if you were here for the setup, you know this, about which principle you might want to dive into more, and then go into some breakout rooms and talk about those with some guided questions, and then come back for a whole group conversation. I know there's a link on the website, but also if you want to access our materials today, you can do so at tinyurl.com/Peralta 2022. And I think Kristina has also shared the link in the chat earlier. And then lastly, we just would like to ask everyone to be aware that we want to host a safe session here. Consider that everyone is here to learn and challenge their preconceived notions and biases. I want to encourage people to listen without judgment. I think some of these might harken back to the previous presentation that some people were talking about. Be open to receiving feedback and also giving it. We want to discuss arguments and not people, and keep what people share in breakout rooms confidential, or ask their permission if you would like to share it. And then, Kevin's already talked about how this session is being recorded. So if you prefer, you can change your Zoom handle to remain anonymous during our conversations. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kristina, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our principles.
Kia ora. I'm Kristina Hoeppner, and hopefully my audio does work. And I work at Catalyst IT in Te Whanganui, Atara, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and have been a member of the task force since 2019. And since then, we've been looking into how we can incorporate digital ethics into ePortfolio practice. And one of the first tasks that we did, especially during the first 2 years of the task force, was create principles that help work with digital ethics and also implement them in ePortfolio practice, be that in the assignments, but also the work that students do. And here on this slide, you see all 13 of them. If you were here in the break between the sessions, you would have already heard that we are currently revising some of them. And that was always the intention of the task force, that we are not creating a static resource that is there and set in stone, but that it is a living project where we are iterating over what we have learned, what we are learning during sessions like these, for example. And so currently there are 13, but if you do have quite a bit of overlap, so we are going to combine them. And the principles are really there to give a guiding hand to anybody working with portfolios and wanting to look at, well, how can I bring digital ethics into my portfolio practice, because what each principal has is that, if Sarah goes to the next slide, please, is that we have a rationale, but as kind of an overview of the principle itself, just briefly explaining what it is about. And then we are immediately going into the practical application with a number of strategies of how that principle can be employed in the context of ePortfolios. And these strategies are then exemplified on scenarios, because sometimes it might be quite a bit tricky to get a feel of what a particular strategy means. So we are giving some good practice on hand, examples of what how that principle could then be realized in the actual world. And last but not least, we have a number of resources available for each principle to delve deeper into the subject matter. And that already takes us really, really quickly into the breakout room, because this is not a presentation session. If you want to learn more about the principles, you can go to the link that I posted earlier with the session resources. And there you find the presentation I gave yesterday about the principles themselves. And also, if you go to the principles, then you can, and thank you very much for posting the link, Megan. If you go to the principles themselves, there you also find a task force scholarship page where you'll find all the presentations and also workshops that we've given over the last 2.5 years, and explore them more for yourself. But now I'm going to hand over to the next person. I think it's
Hello.
Theresa.
Yeah, it's Megan.
Oh, Megan. Sorry.
You're fine. Hey, everyone. Megan Haskins. I work at the University of Denver as a faculty developer. So as Kristina mentioned, this is not a session where we're going to talk at you the whole time. We really want to spend some time with you all working with the principles. If you're sitting here and you're thinking, I don't know anything about these principles, I'm not prepared for this, we did this intentionally. So what we're going to do is we're going to poll you to see which topic you're most interested in learning more about and discussing. That might be just by reading the 1-sentence description or even just the word of the principle. And then once we get into breakout rooms, we'll take some time to read through the principles individually before we start talking. So no need to worry. We have built that time into the session. So if you can go to the next slide, I'll give kind of an overview. So just so you all know what to expect in the breakout rooms, we'll have time to introduce ourselves, talk about what we know about ePortfolios in the context of our work, and then discuss some of these kind of key questions about principles and equity based on the topic that you have. So I actually don't know how to facilitate a poll. So Sarah, I'm gonna let you talk.
It's been launched.
There we go. Okay, perfect. So you should see the poll in front of you. And Sarah, I'll let you handle it.
Yeah, and I'm relying a little bit on Kevin here too, who I think is going to help us with the breakout rooms. But our goal is to just see, based on what people in the room are interested in talking about. And as Megan said, once we get into our rooms, we're going to give you some time at the beginning of the breakout session to go explore the principle that you select. So it's not like you're just being thrown in to talk about this word and you're not exactly sure what that conversation might look like. So go ahead and take the poll if you can.
And as people take the poll, I'll encourage those who don't feel qualified or ready to discuss it in the context of ePortfolios to take a step back and think about, in your online courses, assignments that you ask students to complete, technologies that you ask them to use, ways that you ask them to showcase their work, maybe outside of an ePortfolio structure, so that you can bring your ideas to the conversations as well.
Yeah,
Thank you for
100%.
that, Kevin.
A lot of this applies to online contexts more broadly, for sure.
Mhm. Well, it looks like 4 stand out as more interest in those. And with 25 people in the room, that's probably around 6 people per discussion.
Yeah, I think that works out perfectly. So can we create, now, do you do this, Kevin, or should I do it?
I believe I'm the only one who can't. So if we number them, 1 for DEIBD, 2 for practice, 3 for evaluation, and 4 for accessibility, that because they'll only have numbers, then we'll do that. Now, the challenge is we won't be able to tell who said what they're interested in based on this poll because it's anonymous. So you may have said, this is what I'm interested in, but then get put somewhere else, and we apologize for that.
Oh, but can we make it so people can choose their room?
Let's see. Let participants choose their room. Yes, we can.
Perfect.
So I'm going to create 4 rooms, and then we'll put it in the chat. Somebody already did. Megan's faster with the fingers. So I'm going to create those rooms, and then people, when you tell me we're ready to go, we'll start that up.
Go for it.
And then the 4 of us need to decide who's going into which room.
Yes. I was about to say standoff.
Anita, I'm glad we could model this for you. Hopefully it'll be a little more seamless when you do it.
Right.
Exactly.
The key is telling the moderator while you're doing the session.
Oh,
Yeah,
perfect.
no prep time.
All right. So if you're interested in diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and decolonization, put yourself in room 1. If you're interested in practice, put yourself in room 2, evaluation in room 3, and accessibility room 4. Megan's taking accessibility. Kristina's taking DEIBD. That just leaves practice and evaluation for Theresa and Sarah.
I'm just waiting.
Kevin, I'll take evaluation.
Sounds good. That means put yourself in room number 3.
I put myself in room number 2.
All right. And I'll stay in the main room just in case we get latecomers or anything else and explain to them what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Do you have a time limit when you want these rooms to end, Sarah?
We were gonna do 20 minutes.
Okay, I'll set a timer.
All right, thank you.
Welcome back, everybody.
Sorry, had to get everything kind of reset up there. And I will move us on to our kind of closing conversation, which Theresa is going to lead for us. I think.
Now I want to spend the next few minutes in open discussion about what we learned. And we were all in different breakout rooms. So anybody want to share what they discussed in their breakout room? Well, I can get the ball rolling. And one thing I discovered in my breakout room, there was a lot of interest in ePortfolios, but most people in my group hadn't actually used them. There was one person who'd used them and found them very helpful in an economics class. That was Tamina. I don't know if Tamina, you want to speak about that, but other participants were interested, but hadn't actually tried them out yet. What was the experience with the rest of you in the other groups?
I can make a start there. In our breakout room 1, we also had a wide range of ePortfolio experience, from complete novice to very experienced. And so we've actually shared part of what session 8A was about yesterday, the CV framework that was presented by Portland State University, Melissa Peary, and also Andrew Lawrence. And please do check out that one because it goes very well with the digital ethics principles and looks in particular at belonging of students. Then another participant shared that they are living in an area where they often need to have very complicated conversations due to the history in the American South. And while the context wasn't particular to ePortfolios, we kind of looked at the wider educational context. And so what they are doing is through having those complicated conversations that their students often didn't have in the past in their families or with their friends, that they are giving them a vocabulary to have those conversations with others and make sense of them and give them also a space. And really also make sure that they talk about identity at the start. Another important aspect for me from that, what this participant shared was that the senior management seems to be very much on board. There's even an office for DEIB, and that certainly helps also bring it into the classroom and into everything that is done at that institution.
Yeah, so in our group too, identity development was a big issue and differences in identity. And we also got talking about how our discussion led into the DEIBD discussion as well. Did you all find that too, that many of the principles were intertwined?
Yeah,
Sarah?
sorry. It took me a minute I was trying to unmute myself, but I also saw, in a similar situation to you, Theresa, we had a longer conversation about what ePortfolios are and what that means in the context of something like practice. And so we ended up talking about tools, which is why, sorry, I forgot for a minute, I was sharing my screen and I saw in the chat that Douglas had said finding the right tool can be difficult. So a go-to site that he goes to, sorry. My dogs are going after the male person, is this one. And I wanted to look at it because we ended up talking about tools and I was just reminded how tools connect to practice in ways that I hadn't been thinking about in terms of equity, but they really do, right? Because if students are using 4 different tools to create 4 different portfolios, they're not getting practice with one tool. And that ended up being like a lot of what our conversation was about. And then at the end, another participant reminded us of Google Sites because that was not one that I had brought up before when we were talking about that. And I thought that was really helpful too, because sometimes we get stuck on like the education developed tools and not just everything else.
Yeah, our discussion as well, we ended up talking about tools, especially if you're new to ePortfolios. It is very important consideration which platform you're going to use. And then we were talking about the technical aspects, how to make friends with your instructional technology, have some support, have peer educators, have people looking at your portfolio, even if it's not to assess, but to give you feedback. Was that something that came up for other people, how to, the practicalities of it, how to get help in the classroom?
I saw Tamina just raise her, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, Tamina.
I think Theresa covered it more or less, but I think my students, and I was sharing in our group, we were in the evaluation group with Theresa, and this is the 3rd semester that I'm using ePortfolio. It's an assignment that I give 10% of their grade. And my experience is that my students absolutely love it. And they use Google Sites. I don't give too many choices, but there's a detailed rubric that I shared with my group in our breakout room. But my overall experience is that the end product is amazing. And I could not know my students any better. I can teach them for 16 weeks. I can be the content expert and talk to them and do all kinds of these activities and assignments in my class, but I could never know my students better until I saw or started giving them the ePortfolio assignments. So I just wanted to bring that thing up. It may not be perfect. It may just be a start. So, help them, guide them with this, in this journey that, okay, it's a start. It doesn't have to be the super perfect, whatever. It's a start and you can build on this later on, but it's a good start. And they love doing this assignment. I can just tell you this. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamina. So that connects us, that brings us back to equity. And anyone else might want to make any comments on how ePortfolios did promote equity, how they can see those connections there? So a lot of it's about identity, but were there any other comments?
Yeah, in the accessibility group, we talked a bit about how creating accessible ePortfolios lends itself naturally to more equitable portfolios because they're going to be easily accessed and transferable to different devices if you're using accessible like reading order and headings and things like that. And then I also talked a little bit about how those principles also lend themselves better to visual design. So if you're creating headings, you're using high contrast, you're doing things like that, they're going to be easier to access for all users.
Mm-hmm. All right, I can see we are running out of time. So can we have the next slide? I want to go with all this enthusiasm and tell you about our next events. So if you like this and you are thinking that that might be something you want to work with to promote equity in your classrooms, we wanted to tell you about some up and coming events that we have to promote ePortfolios. So we are doing a webinar series, the Digital Ethics Group. We have one of our events coming up on the 7th of June already, and it is about support and practice. You can see the link there. And then we have our annual meeting, the AAEEBL meeting. This year, it's going to be completely online. So we hope that that will encourage people to be able to participate. And then we've also given you the link to our Digital Ethics Task Force. And we hope that you will look at our scholarship. If those of you who are new, there's an infinite amount of resources, more than you could ever read through in any kind of short amount of time. And I just want to leave some space for the other members of the Digital Ethics Group to add anything else I might have forgotten to mention. There's also a link there for feedback.
Yes, I just wanted to say if you are, if you want to get in touch with us, please feel free to come to any of the workshops. They're all free. But we would also just love to help you out if you're in a situation where you're using ePortfolios and you want to think through any of these ideas with us. We'll also have a call coming out over the summer for people who might be interested in joining the task force at some point. And lastly, we do ask for your feedback. If somebody could stick that link in the chat, that would be awesome. And this is really just us trying to get the word out about ePortfolios and digital ethics and making sure, kind of tracking how good of a job we're doing that. So we'd really appreciate your feedback.
And Sarah mentioned our call for new members of the task force. I just wanted to say you don't need to be an expert in ePortfolios or digital ethics. We are all learning, and we all of us who've been on the task force now for 2.5 or 1.5 years, depending, have learned so much over the time. It's very great way to expand your knowledge and kind of also have dedicated time to do it. And so we haven't made any plans for what we are doing next year. This year, we are very much focusing on the revising of the principles and also the promotion of the principles through workshops and doing that outreach work in order to make more people aware of the importance of digital ethics in portfolios. So we'd love to have you join us in that effort and have your voice heard as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, digital ethics aficionados from all across the land and around the world. I have also put in the chat the link, one more link, because we can't have too many. The Padlet board that the conference put together for each session. So I put the one for this particular session. If you have questions, comments, and you don't remember email addresses or bit.ly links, we'll give you a Padlet link. So we are going to close this session now. So my thanks to all of you, Sarah, Kristina, Megan, Theresa, and Megan Mize, because I know you're watching the recording right now. Make sure to connect with them in Padlet and other places, and make sure to come back in 14 minutes for our next conversation in this online equity conference. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I encourage you to all have a great day. Take a bio break, and we'll see you back here in just a short bit.